Hello, I'm Geraldine and these are my novel opinions. I will go through the books that I read in March 2026 in this video, which covered the end of my attempt to read the International Booker long list, and then will see me move on to the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. So the first book I read was The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran by Shida Bazyar. This is the story of a young family who leave Iran after the expulsion of the Shah in 1979. The father had been a revolutionary trying to get something better for the people of Iran, but sadly it didn't work out, and so felt that he had to move his family out, and he's not sure when he's going to be able to go back, but he always hopes that some regime will come along which will allow him to do that. The book really is the story of straddling two cultures. This can be particularly difficult as younger generations come along and become more part of the new country's culture than their parents' old country. But it also shows how Western culture isn't necessarily the ideal that they're aiming for. And how it can prove to be just a different form of oppression that we can't see ourselves because we're living in it. The book was written before certain recent events happened in Iran, which makes the ending all the more poignant. I did enjoy this book, but I did find parts of it rather repetitive and drawn out. But overall it was a good read. Oh, and I should add that it was translated from the German by Ruth Martin. Next, I read Writers and Lovers by Lily King. Now, I read this because I wanted to read Heart the Lover, which is on the Women's Prize long list. So I felt that I needed to read this first. I'm not sure that I did in actual fact, but I thought it was good practice. This is the story of a woman who wants to become a writer, but is struggling to get anything down on paper. So in the meantime, she's working waiting tables to make ends meet. While she's doing that, she meets two very different men who she falls for, and the story's about how that plays out. The characters are very well written, very well rounded, but I found there was rather too much tedious detail on waiting tables and what that can involve. So I found that a little bit boring. Added to that, romance is not a genre that I enjoy, although this was particularly well written. I think I was reading a little bit outside my comfort zone. And it didn't help that I found the main character a little bit unsympathetic in that I found her to be a bit reckless and irresponsible at times. I also found the ending a little bit too convenient. I'm sure others will disagree with me, but I didn't find that particularly satisfying. As I say, very well written, but otherwise not really for me. Nevertheless, I went on to read Heart the Lover by Lily King afterwards. This is both a prequel and a sequel to Writers and Lovers. So the book is in two halves. You see her before the events of Writers and Lovers and then afterwards. I enjoyed this an awful lot more, but mainly for the final section. I found it enjoyable up to that point, but it's when it really comes into its own. It is as emotional as people say, and I did cry. As I say, I don't think you need to read Writers and Lovers beforehand, and you don't really need to read them in that order, but I think to get the most out of them, it's probably best to read them both and in order. Next, I read A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar. This is set in the near future in a Kolkata where climate change has caused rising temperatures and flooding, which in turn has caused food shortages. We follow a woman whose husband has emigrated to America on a climate visa, I think they call it. And in a week's time, her father and her daughter are going to follow him. The story starts with their visas being stolen in a house break-in, and the book covers the following week up until the time when they're due to leave. So we follow them as they try to get their visas back, and at the same time try to get some food, because they had a lot of their food stolen in this break-in, because it's valuable stuff. But also we follow the thief himself and find out his background and the reasons for his breaking in. This book makes us judge our moral codes, just what would we do if we were desperate, and also how would we judge those same actions if they were committed by a respectable employed person compared to a slightly hopeless teenager. The book also touches on racist attitudes towards people who are fleeing desperate situations in their countries, and the politicians who bow to those views in the race for votes. I really enjoyed this book. It was very compelling to read, and the ending, which is quite controversial for some people don't like it, but I thought it was an absolutely amazing ending. So yes, I definitely recommend this one from the Women's Prize list. The next book I read was Gloria Don't Speak by Lucy Apps, and oh my word, as much as I loved A Guardian and a Thief, this is definitely my book of the month. Now, I might have personal reasons for liking it. As I've mentioned before, I did grow up with a sister with learning difficulties. In fact, you can see her just down there. And it probably didn't help my emotional state that while I was reading this, it was not only, or would have been, her birthday, but it was also the anniversary of her death. So I had been thinking about her a lot recently while I was reading this book. But nevertheless, as much as I thought it was just for personal reasons, I think this is an affecting book for anyone. I remember while I was describing it to a friend just after I closed the back cover, and I started crying twice while I was talking to her about it. But then she went on to read it and she found it very affecting as well. So anyway, it follows Gloria, who has learning difficulties. She's a young woman, she's about 19 when the book starts. And she's finished her formal college education. So for the time being, she lives with her mum in a one-parent family. And she fills her days by wandering the streets and sitting in the local park. And while she does that, she befriends a man called Jack, who is dangerously unstable. Now, this book is very cleverly written because although it's written in the third person, you're seeing everything through Gloria's understanding of it and the way she processes information and situations. So with Jack, she gets very confused because sometimes he's very kind to her. He buys her bags of chips and cans of Coke, takes her back to his flat. And other times he is very, very frightening, and she can't really process the difference between these two sides of his character. We also see how certain words and phrases form rhythms in her head, and they keep repeating in her head as she tries to process things. And we also see her being confused by situations where she has been in a similar but different situation in the past, and she gets the present and the past confused in her mind. And it's just spectacularly well written, absolutely amazing. But at the same time, we can see things from our point of view because we know what's really going on. And so there are several absolute heart-in-the-mouth moments when you think, no, just don't do that, don't do that. But it really does expertly convey the frustration of trying to get someone with learning difficulties to articulate what they're thinking or feeling. As I say, this book did make me cry, even after I'd finished reading it. But I think it was just on occasion, I just got completely overwhelmed by the emotion of it. It wasn't any particular event in the book that did it. It was just the whole. But anyway, as I say, I absolutely adored this book, and I would urge everyone to go out and read it. Finally, in March, I read Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. This is the story of a man who is in a same-sex relationship, but he finds himself strongly attracted to a female colleague at work. He really wants to become a writer, and he's had some success with publishing poetry, but for the most part he relies financially on his wealthy partner, and then later in the book on this colleague. It's beautifully written, which is what kept me going, but unfortunately I just didn't sympathise with the characters. Certainly the main character, he seems very self-centred, and it's all a little bit too convenient that he has all these magic money trees that he can call on whenever he needs to. A lot of people have found this book devastating, and I can absolutely see why, but I'm afraid it just didn't chime with me as far as the characters were concerned. So that was all my reading for March. At the moment I am reading Paradiso 17 from the Women's Prize list. I'm almost finished. I've only got a few pages left to read. I'm not hugely enjoying it, but we'll see how I get on by the time I've finished it. So anyway, I will be back at the beginning of May for my April roundup. And in the meantime, I hope you have a lovely Easter, and I will speak to you then. Bye.